people were not around. We ran out of chairs last time, so I said set up more chairs, and they did. So they did what they were supposed to do, but I was expecting tables. So anyway, if you haven't been with us before, usually there are note cards, and you let me know you're here, and we don't have that. So welcome, I'm glad you're here. Let me start with a prayer. Let's open with a prayer, and then I'll get us started with our presentation. Gracious God, we thank you for your presence here. Be with us as we seek to learn more about the issue of anxiety, and help us to know more about how we can thrive by the power of your grace and by the power of good medical care and counseling. We just ask that you be with us and help us to hear wisdom from you tonight. It's in Christ that we pray. Amen. Welcome. Come on in. I'm Pastor Holly Wilson. If you don't know me, I'm the pastor of Care and Community here at University. And I'm just really thrilled. This is our last evening together in this series. This is the 6th of 6 weeks. And this is our last topic is anxiety. Of course, we're talking about this. If you haven't been with us before, the reason why we're talking about anxiety is because a year ago, we did a mental health survey in the whole congregation, and the congregation told us that they had about 5 top issues. Anxiety is one of them, which is what we'll talk about tonight. Depression, substance abuse, trauma, and adult survivors of child abuse. So we've talked about all of those things, and tonight we'll end with anxiety. Before I kind of kick it over to Dr. David Catterdahl to give us our clinical information about anxiety tonight, I just want to remind you that as we've gone through these sessions, one of the things that has come up over and over and over again is that many people are going to have more than one of those top 5 things. Anxiety and depression go together a lot. If you're an adult survivor of child abuse, you may have issues of anxiety and or depression. Substance abuse has issues of anxiety and depression. There's all these things go together. So I'd just like to lift that up tonight, that if you're here for anxiety and you've been waiting for this one, I'm glad you're here. But know that there may be other components of the other things that we've discussed that would be meaningful to you. And so every single one of our sessions is online. This one will be online on our website under the Care and Community tab. Just go down and look for Starting the Conversation. And you can watch every one of the other presentations that has been done already. And if you've missed some, I think that might be helpful for you. Go back and look at the others. One last thing before David comes up. I'd like the Mental Health Initiative team, if you've served on that, would you raise your hand or stand up maybe? Yeah. These are folks that are going to be around after the presentation. Yeah, Richard's the butcher. Richard's part of the team. He didn't stand up, but he's part of the team. We're not going to take question and answer throughout our presentation. There will be some time at the very end for you to ask questions in the large group, but there's also time built in. We will dismiss before you have to go over to get your kids, so that you can come up and have one-on-one interaction with any of us on the Mental Health Initiative team if you want to ask some more personal or more directed questions. So, with that being said, I'm going to introduce David Catterdahl. Come on up, David. David came into my office a few weeks after I'd been here. We had a wonderful conversation, and he said, what if we put together a mental health initiative? What would that look like? And here we are.
So, other than me, has anybody in the room ever experienced anxiety? So the reality is anxiety is part of life. We're human and we experience anxiety. So, and Holly did a great introduction about how we purposely selected anxiety for the ultimate presentation because everything else really overlaps with anxiety disorders. So what I want to do tonight, and if you've got the handout in the back, that's an important handout for you because when I talk, it's like drinking from a fire hose. Okay? I'm going to give you lots of information, and take the handout so you have it at home. All right? So what I want to do is I want to talk about, there we go. What is anxiety? What are we talking about? So it's defined as an emotion characterized by feelings of tension, worried thoughts, and physical changes. So people can experience recurrent intrusive thoughts or concerns, avoidance of certain situations out of worry, physical symptoms like sweating, trembling, dizziness, those kind of symptoms. There we go. So I want to talk about the spectrum of anxiety. So we'll start by talking about healthy anxiety. And so I know that you're probably thinking that's an oxymoron, right? We're going to talk a little bit about why it isn't. Then you have an adjustment disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, and finally panic disorder, which is kind of the ultimate anxiety disorder you can have. What do we mean by healthy anxiety? So if you're confronted in the woods by a bear, all right, your adrenal gland cranks out adrenaline, your pupils dilate, your heart races, you breathe fast, and this is designed for you to respond quickly, all right, with fight or flight. Hopefully flight rather than fight. All right, so this is an adaptive response. So in fact, what they found in studies is you want to have some anxiety, okay? If you have no anxiety, that's not adaptive, okay? So if you're down here, if you're mellow all the time, you can't respond in an emergency, right? If your son walks out into the middle of the street, you want to be able to respond quickly. All right? So a certain amount of anxiety is healthy. Your performance actually is improved by having a certain amount of anxiety in your life. The problem is when we get over this hump and we start going over here. So we're getting more and more anxiety with less and less function. Okay? That's when we get into anxiety disorders. All right, what's an adjustment disorder? So an adjustment disorder is you're confronted by a stressor of some sort, your adrenaline is cranked up again, but you're left with chronic anxiety because either this stressor that you're experiencing is really not as big as you think it is, all right? So you're overreacting to the level of stress, or even after the stressor has gone, you're still anxious from it, okay? That's kind of what an adjustment disorder is. So here's the criteria. So it's an anxiety in response to a stressor that occurs within 3 months of onset of that stressor, and it's associated with either more distress than expected from the stressor you're experiencing, or a significant amount of impairment in terms of your social life, your occupational life. It's not due to another disorder or exacerbation of some pre-existing condition. It's not due to what's called normal bereavement. So everybody kind of defines normal bereavement on their own criteria. The DSM-5 defines it as less than a year. Okay? And then obviously, once the stressor or its consequences have resolved, the adjustment disorder will resolve within 6 months. So it's a self-limited disorder. It should eventually get better on its own. Okay? So, what about generalized anxiety disorder? Well, here you have no defined stressor, no defined trigger getting this disorder going. All right? You still have a high adrenaline state, and you have chronic anxiety. All right? Without any defined initiating event. So it may come on during some other event, some other disorder, but long after that has resolved, you're left with this chronic anxiety state. Okay? So here are the criteria. So excessive anxiety or worry occurring more days than not. So more than half of your days, you're filled with this chronic anxiety. It's difficult, you have difficulty controlling the amount of worry you have. You can't just say, I'm not going to worry about that. That doesn't work. You can't turn it off. The anxiety must be associated with at least 3 of these. So feeling on edge, fatigue, concentrating, irritability, motor tension, sleep disturbances, significant about distress or impairment again, all right? Not due to some substance or medical condition, we'll go through those in a second, and not better explained by some other disorder. So these are some of the medical conditions and other drugs, medications that can be associated with anxiety. So most of these you probably won't recognize, but a couple of them you might. So obstructive sleep apnea, I think probably most of us have heard about that, okay? Really common as the weight of our population goes up, the amount of obstructive sleep apnea also goes up, okay? Let's see, what else? So here, vitamin B12 deficiency can give you chronic anxiety. Food additives, so monosodium gluten. If you're going to the Chinese restaurant every night, that may be the source of your anxiety. All right, herbal preparations. Ginkgo biloba has been known to be associated with anxiety. And then, of course, the medication. So caffeine, everybody's probably heard of caffeine before, right? So if you drink a pot of coffee a day, probably not good. All right, stimulants. So if you have ADD and you're on stimulants, if you're trying to lose weight and you take a weight loss preparation, there's a kind of antidepressant called bupropion, and one of its side effects is increased anxiety. Okay? Asthma medications are known to cause anxiety. Seizure medications. So there's a lot of medications that can be a source of your anxiety or can worsen. All right, and then we come to panic disorder. So panic disorder, so there is no defined stressor here, but it sure feels like there is. It feels like that bear has come out of the blue without any kind of warning. And your adrenal glands have gone into hyperdrive, and you have episodic terror. Okay, now if you've never experienced a panic attack, you really have no idea what this is like. All right? Let me give you an example. So 20 years ago, I had an acquaintance who was a pretty big-time cocaine user. It was destroying his life, destroying his finances, obviously, his relationships. It was so bad at one point he started to have seizures from the cocaine. Did that stop him? Did he get help? No. He continued to use the cocaine until he had his first panic attack. And then he checked himself into a treatment center. That's how distressing it is. Okay? All right. So here's what a panic attack, how it's defined. So unexpected or triggered abrupt surges of intense fear that peak within minutes of onset and are associated with at least 4 of these symptoms. So look at some of these. So palpitations, chest pain, dizziness. So it's no wonder that people tend to run to the emergency room thinking they're having a heart attack or stroke when they experience this. All right? And look at the bottom here. Fear of losing control, going crazy, or dying. This is how people, what they feel like's going on with them. All right? All right, now that's a panic attack. To have panic disorder, you have to have recurrent, unexpected panic attacks. So at least some of these attacks come on without any obvious trigger. You can be sitting relaxed, watching TV, and wham, it hits you. Okay? And remember, you've got at least 4 of those symptoms, and they peak quickly. Within a few minutes, they're extremely intense. And so at least one of the attacks has to be followed by at least 1 month with at least persistent fear that you're going to have more attacks, or its consequences, or it produces significant change in your behavior like avoidance. You avoid things that you think are going to give you more panic attacks. We'll talk a little bit about that in a second. Obviously not due to another substance or medical conditions. All right, so let's compare these disorders we've talked about. So adjustment disorder here, so there's not, other than being associated with a stressor, it doesn't have a lot of other conditions it's associated with. The course, so it tends to resolve within 6 months after the stressor and its consequences have resolved. So eventually it will go away on its own. So the goal of treating people with this is function. Function, 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 all right? They have to be able to function in their life. They have to feel fulfilled, that they're able to do what they want to do with their life. Generalized anxiety disorder is a different kettle of fish here. So it's often associated with things like substance abuse, because people may turn to drugs and alcohol as a way of self-medicating themselves. Right? It's almost always associated with another mental disorder. It almost never occurs alone. Okay? So if you have or know somebody with generalized anxiety disorder, chances are there's something else going on with them as well. Okay? And again, the goal is function here. But the course, this is a chronic disorder. This is not like adjustment disorder. It's not going to eventually just go away on its own. It's here to stay. And you need to be doing something about it. Okay? And then there's panic disorder. So panic disorder is associated with not only substance abuse, depression is a big correlation with panic disorder. So 50% of people who have major depressive disorder also have panic attacks. 50% of people with panic disorder also have depression. Strong association there. And suicide. Wait a minute, think about that. So even if you take out the people who have depression and they just have panic disorder, their risk of suicide is markedly increased. And if they have major depression, they tend to act on their suicidal thoughts during a panic attack. That's how distressing, again, that panic attacks are. Now the course for panic disorder is one of relapsing. Okay? So it may go away after a while in some people, but it tends to come back, okay, eventually. And one disorder I didn't talk about is agoraphobia. So agoraphobia in the Greek means fear of the marketplace. So it's not just fear of HEB. It's fear of going out. It's fear of the open spaces. It's fear of being around crowds. Many people will say, I can't drive a car anymore because I'm scared to death. When I'm behind the wheel, I'll have a panic attack and get into an accident. I can't go to the mall anymore because what if I'm surrounded by people, I have a panic attack and I either embarrass myself or I can't get help if I feel like I need it. Okay? And so they tend to, in agoraphobia, that people tend to withdraw further and further into their homes. This is the only place I feel safe. Okay? And so as you might guess, that's extremely disabling for the person. It's also disabling for the family. It has a major effect on the family. All right? Now the goal of therapy is to be panic-free. No panic attacks. Okay? Whoever helps you, whoever treats you, that really is their goal. The reason is that as long as you're having panic attacks, you're at risk for developing agoraphobia. Okay? And it doesn't matter if the panic attack is a little less intense. It doesn't matter if they're a little less frequent. There's still a risk from it. So the goal ultimately is for you to be panic-free. The problem is, if you look at the little box there, nothing will shorten a panic attack or abort it once it starts. Okay? So I know everybody wants to say, okay, I'll take a little pill when I feel it coming on. That doesn't work. Okay? So taking medicines as you feel like you need them is not a treatment for panic disorder. Okay? All the treatments work by preventing the attack from starting in the beginning. Okay? That's the only treatment for panic disorder. All right? Let's talk about how you treat these things. All right? So one thing across the board here, as you see, getting adequate sleep, always important. Okay? Number 2, exercise. Oh, I know we don't want to talk about that, do we? Yeah, but guess what? Studies have shown aerobic exercise is actually a treatment for generalized anxiety disorder and panic disorder. Limiting your stimulants, so reducing your caffeine levels. Now stimulants, so remember, stimulants are not just caffeine, all right? Guess what, guys? Chocolate is a stimulant. That's not good for you, all right? There's other stimulants, so things like cheese, red wines, avocados, certain nuts like almonds, processed meats. So when you have that polska kielbasa, you're putting stimulants in your body, okay? Okay, all those things you need to be avoiding if you have an anxiety disorder, all right? And look out for panic disorder. So tobacco and marijuana are known to be triggers of panic attacks. Okay? I actually had a woman years ago who all she did was stop smoking and stop her marijuana use, and the panic went away. She was panic-free. Okay? So the other thing here that probably nobody's ever heard is a chemical called inositol. It's a sugar. You can find it in things like dairy products, fish, poultry, beans, and it's used by the body to make some of your neurotransmitters. And it's actually been shown to be a treatment for panic disorder. Now the problem is you need 6 grams a day, so that's a heck of a lot of fish. You're probably not going to be able to eat enough salmon to get it that way. But you can go to GNC and buy it there, okay? So that is a treatment for people that are really resistant to doing anything else. All right, psychotherapy. Whoa. So there's a number of psychotherapeutic approaches that work for adjustment disorder. So several weeks ago, Pat talked about this. I don't want to go through it again. I think if you're going to get treatment for adjustment disorder, that's where you go. So I know people sometimes use medication. I don't think medication is the way to go for an adjustment disorder because you're not reacting normally to a stressor. And a pill is not going to do that for you, okay? It's not going to help you with that. So in the spring, we're going to talk about the mental health toolkit. Those are going to be a variety of techniques to help you deal with stress and build resilience. Those are going to be techniques that are going to help you, all right? Generalized anxiety disorder. So again, there's a number of approaches, behavioral approaches, that are going to help with generalized anxiety disorder. In my book, everybody who has a generalized anxiety disorder and it's impacting them really needs psychotherapy. Okay? Because remember, this is a chronic problem. This is not self-limiting. It's not going to go away on its own. You're going to have this the rest of your life. All right? Yes, if you look at the bottom, there are medications that can help, but do you really want to be on a pill until you're 90 years old? Okay? In my book, I don't think you want that. And there's certain pills, certain tranquilizers. Yeah, tranquilizers are very effective at helping you with anxiety. But as you get older, tranquilizers are dangerous. All right? When you're elderly, tranquilizer increases your risk of falls, increases your risk of dementia and delirium. All right? You really shouldn't be on a tranquilizer. I had a lady in 2 weeks ago, been on one for 30 years for generalized anxiety and never gotten off it. She was not happy with me when I said you have to get off this. Okay? But she never got behavioral approaches. She never learned how to deal with her anxiety any other way than taking a pill for it. All right, panic disorder. So again, there's a number of great approaches from a psychotherapeutic approach to deal with this. One of the most important things in panic disorder is catastrophic thinking. So people with panic disorder believe the worst possible is happening to them. All right? I don't know, so 6 months ago, Ben Trammell was giving a sermon. Now, for those of you who are still awake, you might remember he told us that he had had a panic attack in his life. if you weren't paying attention, he said something very important. He said, oh, I was under a lot of stress, and boom, I had this panic attack out of the blue. But, he said, but I knew I was under a lot of stress, and so I figured that's what was going on. That's probably what saved him from developing panic disorder, is he had the insight to say, whoa, this is not a heart attack, I'm not having a stroke, this is due to all the stress I'm under. The problem is most people with panic disorder don't have that insight. So they have this sudden intense fear and they think, oh my God, I'm having a heart attack, I'm going crazy, I'm having a stroke, and they don't put two and two together and think, oh, this is stress, I'm under too much stress, I need to do something about it. All right? So, there are a number of medications that can help with panic disorder, all right? And yes, it can have a self-resolution period. The problem is that, yeah, so you may be able to go off your medication in a year, and you may have some time without having panic attacks, but there's a good chance they're going to come back. And studies have shown that if you compare people who treat their panic with medication versus those that get into psychotherapy, your chance of a relapse is much less if you go the psychotherapy route. Okay? So that's why I really recommend, yeah, you can go with medication, but I don't think it's a substitute for the psychotherapy. Okay? The other thing is to remember, tranquilizers are not benign. Okay? All right, so when should you seek treatment? So this is my opinion, so our other experts here may think I'm totally crazy and blow me out of the water here. But, since I got the floor, I guess. So adjustment disorder. So again, it's self-limited. It will go away once that stressor has resolved. But I would say if you're not improving, if things are just not getting better, even after the stressor's gone away, maybe it's time to get some help. Okay? Definitely, if your anxiety is impairing your life, if you're having marital problems, if you're not working properly at your job, that's time to get some help. Generalized anxiety. So this is chronic anxiety without a definite source. I think you need to get into help. Okay? Certainly when it's starting to impair your life, you definitely need to get help. Panic disorder. If you've had this catastrophic interpretation, if you think these panic attacks are something disastrous, you need to get help right away, in my opinion. Okay? You're not going to suddenly convince yourself that, oh, this is just my stress, just my anxiety. No, you need help to get over that. All right? If you're starting to avoid things, if you catch yourself saying, oh, maybe I'll go to the store tomorrow instead, okay? Maybe I'll wait until my spouse gets home so he can drive me to the store, or he can go to the store instead of me, okay? If you're starting to avoid things, you need to start to get some help, okay? Certainly, if it's impairing your life, if you're developing full-blown agoraphobia, if you're having suicidal thoughts, you need to take that seriously and get help. All right, so let's, in summary, so there's a spectrum of anxiety. Not all anxiety is bad, it helps us get things done, it helps us accomplish things. All right, anxiety is a symptom, it's not a disorder in and of itself. So there are medical disorders, medications that can cause these things. Other mental health disorders often include anxiety as one of their symptoms. Their specific anxiety disorders are important because they differ in their course, their consequences, and their treatments. And I recommend goal-based treatment. Okay, so you need to know what the goal is. What are you trying to accomplish here? All of these disorders are going to be better if you're getting adequate sleep, if you're exercising, if you're avoiding stimulants. That's kind of a duh moment. All right, psychotherapy, I think, is the best long-term treatment. I'm not saying medications don't work. I'm not saying I don't use them. Certain medications can be very helpful quick, right? So tranquilizers work a lot faster than an antidepressant or psychotherapy, okay? The problem is getting off the tranquilizers. The problem is tranquilizers can actually impact your response to psychotherapy, okay? One of the goals of psychotherapy is to teach you how to deal with anxiety. You take the anxiety away with a pill, it's going to impact how much benefit you get out of that psychotherapy, all right? And I think early intervention is definitely the way to go, okay? And with that, I'll say thank you.
So I have anxiety. I've had it for years. I've been in therapy for years and will probably be for the rest of my ministry, if not the rest of my life, because that's one of the tools I need. But there's somebody that's got a really better story than mine to tell. And actually, she emailed me the day she got the mental health survey a year ago and said, oh my goodness, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, a million times thank you. Because it made the church a safe place for her. As we've talked before with other issues, the church can be a place where we think we can pray these things away. It can be a place where we think, oh, you just have more faith, you're not going to have these issues. And sometimes we say those things in ways that aren't helpful, and that was part of her story. So I'm deeply thankful that she emailed me when she got the survey, because she's one of the persons who gave me that initial thumbs up that helped us really get some momentum going. So I don't mean this flippantly at all. I believe that God worked through you to help make this night possible. And so Katie Cox is going to come up and tell her story. And before she does, we do this every time we've got a speaker. We begin with prayer, and the prayer is the Lord be with you. With you. Lord, fill Katie with your strength and power. Let her fears and anxieties be pushed away, that your power and her truth might shine through. Use this time in a way that can lead others to freedom through you. In Christ we pray. Amen.
Oh, goodness. I was doing good, and then it always hits me. It's kind of like watching yourself on TV when he was talking. It's like, yeah, that's pretty much my life. So like Holly said, my name is Katie. This is my husband, Justin, and I'm really excited that he's here to support me. We have 2 kids, Katie who's in 4th grade, Kathy who's in 2nd, and we have a new puppy named Lemon, who we're all kind of obsessed with. So all day I was thinking, how am I going to kind of bridge the gap from hi, my name is Katie to reading my story, because I wrote it. I have a lot to share, and it's been taking me a while. But there's not really a way to transition, so I'm just going to get started. I think that my story, I worked hard, prayed hard, and I keep it self-sufficient. I think I was born anxious. I cried all the time. Just ask my parents. Why is she crying now? People would ask. You said hi to her. I did not like attention, especially from people I didn't know very well. I have a collection of party photos through age 5 of me standing over my birthday cake with fully lit candles, with my hands over my ears, crying like this. That's exactly what they look like. It was the happy birthday song. It was loud, and all those eyes on me, and the candles, and the anticipation of it all. It was too much. So I cried tears into my cakes. When I was in kindergarten, my mom had surgery, and when my aunt came to take care of my brother and I, she had to leave a long list of do's and don'ts when it came to me. That list included things like, when you drop Katie off at school, be sure to turn down the radio before she opens the door. When you pick her back up from school, just stand outside the car, don't wave, don't call to her, she'll find you. At gymnastics, I cried regularly when loud music was played. I cried at school too. Almost every day of kindergarten and 1st grade, I cried. So whether or not I was actually anxious at the time of birth, I do believe I came into this world genetically predisposed to anxiety. In fact, many members of my immediate and extended family fall into the overly anxious category. And several of us, at one time or another, have required additional help to manage our symptoms. And I'm certain there will be more just like us in future generations. But as a kid, I didn't know I was any different, just overly sensitive and shy. Those were my 2 labels. And to be fair, I'm not sure my parents thought much more of that. It seemed to be pretty run-of-the-mill stuff, something I'd probably outgrow. And for the most part, I did. I eventually did stop crying every day at school. I could have a normal birthday party. As a teenager, I loved loud music. I was pretty normal. Not one of my early anxiety symptoms prevented me from being an excellent student, a successful high school athlete, an involved member of my church and community. I learned to adapt, to push through. Knowing what I know now, it should have been no big surprise that as the stakes got higher and life hit back harder and harder, that my ability to push through and deal and adapt would require skills and tools and help that I didn't have, or know I needed, or maybe even knew were out there to begin with. Fast forward to June of 2004. I was 21. I had just graduated from college, started my first job, and was engaged to be married in just one short month. My transition meter was off the charts. One day at work, I found myself completely overcome by tears. I was unable to take a deep breath, my heart was racing, I had zero control over what was happening to my body. So I ran into my boss's office this way and I said, I don't know what's wrong, but this is not normal. And she started laughing. Yeah, she laughed. But then she opened up her desk drawer, opened up a pill bottle, and gave me the tiniest white pill I had ever seen. And she said, go home, take this, and get in bed. You'll be better by tomorrow. You're just having a panic attack. Okay. So I did just as she said. I went home, and I was okay. She was right. I was perfectly fine the next day. Side note, I do not recommend ever taking medicine that is not prescribed before you go. But I did have another panic attack until March of 2015, nearly 11 years ago. But this one was far worse. I was at Walmart, and at the time, I thought I was dying. And I could not imagine a sadder story than dying inside Walmart. I mean, can you imagine my obituary? Dead by Walmart. That's pretty bad. So I was shopping for our family's upcoming road trip, and I had already been there an hour. My basket was spilling over the sides with all sorts of things. I was in the shoe aisle when my ears started ringing, and then suddenly I couldn't hear it all. It was like I had cotton balls shoved way down deep. And then the lights got extremely bright, nearly blinding me. I needed sunglasses. My heart was racing. I felt like I was in immediate danger, but I didn't know why or from what. So I grabbed my purse and I left the cart and I headed towards the dressing rooms, hoping there would be an attendant there that could help me. I was afraid I was going to pass out or die or maybe both at the same time. I wasn't really sure what was about to happen. And I was already thinking about my kids. How do you tell a child their mom died at Walmart? I was already heartbroken for them. So there was no one in the dressing room, so I just had to keep walking as I was in a really fast-moving cloud. I was kind of half floating, half speed walking. I had to get out of there. I was fumbling for my phone so I could call someone. I figured I needed to let someone know I was dying and where I was. The first person in my favorites list happened to be my mom. She answered, Mom? I think I'm dying. No surprise, but I didn't die that day at Walmart. But I couldn't explain what happened in there either. And I didn't know what to blame or even how to move forward. I mean, what could it be? Probably my allergies. I blamed everything on my allergies. Or maybe vertigo. That would explain the dizziness and the sudden loss of hearing. Or maybe it was just as simple as having too much coffee that morning. I shouldn't have had that second cup. Or was it third? In my mind, it was always all of the other things, but never exciting. What did I have to be anxious about? Everything was good. Good is what I wanted, so good is what it was. I was in control. All you had to do was ask me. When I entered motherhood in 2009, life was certainly not messing around. Motherhood was every bit of awesome and all kinds of scary at the same time. Both of my children's birth stories were a little dramatic, nothing going quite as I planned or even prayed, most especially after my daughter's birth. I hemorrhaged on the operating table for nearly 2 hours, awake and listening to the doctors as they attempted to fix the spot that wouldn't take a stitch. Each time the stitch wouldn't hold, the tension in the room increased higher and higher. Would they ever get me to stop bleeding? There was a time when they weren't sure. Needless to say, in the moments, days, weeks, and years that followed, my anxiety increased tenfold. But it was more like a millionfold, if that was an actual thing. My entire life, all I wanted to do was be a mom. It was the one thing I was going to be really, really good at. It was my deepest desire. I wanted to be there for every part. I wanted my kids to know how deeply I loved them, and I wanted to laugh and sing and dance and play games with them. Motherhood was my very favorite thing. But after my daughter's birth, that was threatened. I could have died. That wasn't going to happen again. I apparently was going to have to take charge because my brain assured me that these threats were very real and very dangerous. It was up to me to protect myself, and I believed it wholeheartedly. The survival plan started small, and my strategies were subtle. It started with obsessive germ control, making my son take off his clothes immediately when he got home from preschool because of germs. Having special outfits I only wore to doctor's offices because, again, germs. Sanitizing and re-sanitizing bottles of pacifiers in my floors when my daughter started to crawl. I'd spend her entire nap time mopping and then re-mopping my floors. Not only was I trying to protect my children, but also myself. Because if I went down, it would be their mom. If I went down, I wouldn't get to live out my dream of being a mom. If I went down, I'd be replaced. Because even just a cold could be deadly. Haven't you read one, Lindsay? My cooking started to change too. When my daughter was 2, there was a huge E. coli recall with fresh spinach. E. coli could kill me. So I stopped fixing salads. All vegetables from then on had to be cooked. I let my kids eat fruit, but I wasn't willing to risk it. So in summary, I believed it would be best for me not to eat any fresh fruit or vegetables. Makes complete and total sense, doesn't it? Up next, chicken. I decided it was safer for me to never eat chicken anywhere other than my own home. I reasoned it could be safe if I could test its temperature, but I was too embarrassed of what people might think if I carried a meat thermometer in my purse. I contemplated it. But pretty soon, chicken at home turned into no chicken at all, because could I really trust my meat thermometer? This is after I bought 2 new ones to test their accuracy against the original thermometer. So, no chicken at all. It was dangerous. To ensure people weren't completely weirded out by my chicken aversion, I simply told them I had developed it after pregnancy. No one even questioned it. I was totally normal. Every time I ordered a drink from Starbucks, I'd wipe the lid with a Clorox wipe. So the first few sips of every drink was yummy into my teeth. Clorox was never intended to be a flavor. I washed my hands obsessively. I never put anything near my mouth unless I had just washed my hands. And I mean just. I could touch nothing from the paper towel that I dried my hands with to the food that I was about to eat. Not even the box or bag that something like a cracker might have been in. Danger lived on every surface. My hands were always cracked and often bleeding because I washed them so much. When I cooked canned goods, I made sure to boil them for the allotted time to kill botulism. Even though I had read it was extremely rare, I was sure every single can was a time bomb. Of course, this is after I thoroughly inspected each and every can I purchased, making sure there were no dents or dings. This is the first sign of botulism after all. I'm not sure if any of you have ever boiled a can of soup for that allotted time, but if you have, you'll know that there's not much left to slurp. Instead, you scrape the soup off the bottom of the pan, but that was okay with me. Burned, crusty vegetables with zero liquid was the best kind of soup, because it was safe soup. We had a very active social life at the time, which presented some significant challenges for me. I became the master of picking around my plate to act like I was eating the food being served. But I do my very best to avoid putting anything in my mouth. When our church announced a church potluck, I figured I might as well drive off the cliff. The risk was the same to me. My list of rules was exhausting. I never sat down. There was always something to clean, sanitize, overcook, wash, etc., etc., etc. And those were just the external behaviors. There was so much more that no one could ever see. I lived deep inside my head and hardly ever in the present, wherever that happened to be at the time. I can look at pictures from this time and remember exactly what I was worried about on a particular day, but not much else. And it's heartbreaking. Remembering that I was so worried about the safety of the food we were serving at my daughter's second birthday party, that I can't remember if she liked her cake, or if she smiled when we sang to her. There's so many days I wish I could do it. So many. But this is how I live my life. Always assessing and reassessing situations and circumstances. Ending up with the worst case scenario almost every time. I'd go all the way down every rabbit trail ever known to man, and just when I thought I'd explored them all, I would find 5 new ones to go down. I'd spin and spin and spin like a hamster on its wheel. Do I have cancer today? If not today, tomorrow. What if I died before my daughter even goes to kindergarten? Yep, today it's here. Cancer. What if my husband remarries after I die? What if it's her? I could not handle it. She is my replacement. She won't be his. Work harder, clean faster, survive. So you see, I didn't really have anything at all to be anxious about that day in Walmart. Why would I have ever even thought anxiety could have caused that near-death experience? I was totally fine. Healthy even, thanks to my super stellar rules and procedures. In the coming weeks, I continued to have milder episodes that felt similar to what I had experienced that day in Walmart. I felt dizzy, out of sorts, and like I was living in a cloud I couldn't get down from. I was afraid to drive even because of the way I felt, just knowing I'd pass out and crash. I hated driving my kids anywhere. I felt like I was endangering their lives. I was nauseous and had heartburn no matter what I ate. The episodes continued and worsened significantly in both intensity and frequency, to the point where I had no other choice but to acknowledge them for what they were, panic attacks. My life was no longer recognizable. Everything I was working so hard to protect and control, I couldn't enjoy or even experience. I was trapped inside the tiny piece of my brain that continued to remind me of my impending doom. I remember thinking, if I did die, would it really be so bad? At least I wouldn't be afraid any longer. I knew this thinking was flawed, but I also recognized the peace I felt in imagining a life without fear. Aha, there it was. A glimpse of what life could be like without anxiety, and I didn't have to die to experience it. But I kept pushing on, refusing to admit what I considered to be a weakness of both my character and my faith. I just needed to get it together, pray harder, get some more sleep. I was always too busy. One Thursday in May, in one of God's greatest mercies to me, He allowed my most epic panic attack to date to push me towards my first call for Him. I couldn't live like this any longer, and I knew that very literally. I almost drove off the road during this attack, but by God's grace, I made it home safely. But emotionally, I became unhinged. I paced frantically back and forth all around my house. I was hysterical. I felt like I was losing my mind. What am I going to do? I nearly crashed. My kids could be with me next time. I can't do this anymore. I called my doctor. When the receptionist picked up the phone, I said, "This is Katie Cox, and I need to see the doctor. I'm losing my mind. I need help. We can get you in tomorrow morning." Okay, tomorrow. It's all going to be better tomorrow. Right after I got off the phone with the receptionist, I called my husband at work, and I said, "I'm having a mental breakdown. I'm sick. We're going to the doctor tomorrow morning, and I need you to take off of work." Okay. He had no idea what had just happened. This was the first he had heard of any of this. I imagined him thinking, where was this wife of mine who kept an amazingly clean house and loved being a mom? What was wrong? Sure, she was a little quirky about food safety, but I never imagined her to have a complete meltdown. My friend Tiffany called right after. Thinking it was my husband again, I answered. She could tell I was crying. I told her what was happening, and she too was shocked. I was really good at pretending. I marketed myself as a very together, poised, grounded, and even some would have said laid-back person. Lies. She graciously offered to help me with childcare so I could go to the doctor the next morning. Without judgment or too many questions, she was there. The next morning came. It was raining. I had 3 panic attacks on the way to the doctor, one in the waiting room and another in the exam room. When I was back in the exam room, I wouldn't or couldn't sit. My pulse was so high, it wouldn't register on any machine. I paced the tiny little room back and forth as my doctor talked with me and my husband. She reminded me that during my last visit, I had filled out the mental health questionnaire with all 10s, meaning I was A-OK. Lies. People like me weren't supposed to be anxious. I was a Christian, with everything I could possibly need and even wanted. Of course, I was all 10s. She gave me 2 prescriptions, one for Xanax and one for Zoloft. And she said, "Come back in a few weeks, let's talk some more. I think there's some other things that might help you." I immediately said, "I am not interested in therapy. Therapy is for crazy." For the next month, I lived on Xanax in order to function. And functioning the first week or 2 meant lying in bed. It seemed to be the only place I wouldn't have a panic attack. I was paralyzed by fear. The worst part of having a panic attack is fearing that you're going to have another one. It's a vicious cycle. Slowly, as the Zoloft began to do its job, I became more and more able to do simple things again, like take a shower, eat dinner at the dinner table, drive 5 miles down the road, go on a short walk in the neighborhood. Throughout that summer, I began to feel better and better. For the first time in a long time, I seemed to be able to make choices about how I was going to feel. My mind felt steady and focused. That help brought new perspective. Sometimes you never know how bad you felt until you feel good again. And I decided I really liked the way this new me felt, and I was going to do everything in my power to never go back to that place again. Never. I'll do whatever it takes, even the stupid therapy stuff. No one has to know. So I started therapy. Every Tuesday was therapy day. I went faithfully. I put in the work, even the work I wanted to avoid. But ultimately, I would do anything my therapist asked me to because I was determined. There were days when I left therapy and I didn't want to see or talk to another person. I was emotionally and physically sad. Every ounce of everything was squeezed out of me. And then there were other days where I felt light as a feather, with a spring in my step. I loved those days. And eventually, I loved to learn to love the hard days too. They were proof that light always wins. It beats dark 100% of the time. There was a piece of my therapy journey where I uncovered some pretty deep hurt from the church and the people in it. But I don't blame the church and the people because I truly believe they were doing the best they could with the information they had. Ignorance and hurt. That is why this room is so important. Ignorance is turning into knowledge, resources, and help. And that's what Hope loves getting at. I certainly shouldn't judge anyone about being ignorant. I am the Saul turned Paul of the mental illness world. I perpetuated this stigma even after I was the object of the stigma. That's right. You heard that right. Even after I started getting better, there was a part of me that believed I could and should be able to pray it away. That my medicine was just a crutch, and that my anxiety was a direct result of my weakness and poor favor with God. Do not be anxious about anything, but with thanksgiving, present your request to God. I did that. I did everything I knew to do. I was a Sunday school teacher, the MOPS coordinator, an Awana leader, a member of a Bible study, a faithful everyday belief Bible reader. I could not have been better at the church thing. And still it wasn't good enough. And still I lived bound by my anxiety and fear, while seemingly everyone else around me had it all together, just like they thought I did. Side note here, how unloving of me and of all of us to pretend like this with each other. It didn't do any of us any good. A year into my therapy journey, we moved to San Antonio, but I still had work to do, so I found a therapist in San Antonio and pressed on. Over time, I continued to get healthier and healthier, both in managing my anxiety symptoms and also in the ways in which I felt about myself in the midst of it all. I began to truly believe that my disorder was not a punishment or a weakness, just a piece of who I am, similar to my blue eyes and freckles. I was working hard at beating down the stigma in my own brain and keenly aware to those outside forces and what they were saying about my mental health. My ears were always at attention. And then came Pastor Hollywood. She was the first person in a place of leadership within the church, at least any church I had ever been in, to see. She didn't even know me, but she could see me. The Sunday she introduced the mental health survey to the congregation, my husband and I were shocked. We couldn't believe it. The church is seeing our struggle and the hope we had found and wanting to join us in both. And maybe even normalize it all in the process. What would that be like? I took the survey that very day and wrote Holly an email not long after, showering her with gratefulness for her investment in this journey. What a blessing. And I shared my story with her. And a year later, I'm here sharing it with you. I still take Zoloft every day after breakfast. And I still carry Xanax in my purse, even though I haven't had to use it in over 3 years. I still see a therapist weekly, and now it's my favorite day of the week. Therapists are a treasure to the people of this earth, and I plan to be a lifelong subscriber. Thank you for what you do. I eat salads, and even from a salad bar. I wear the same clothes I wore to the doctor the rest of my day. My kids don't have to take off their clothes right when they walk in the door. I eat without washing my hands excessively. I can take showers without fear. I drive, even long distances. I drink straight from my Starbucks cup. No Clorox needed. I still cry and laugh and find joy in all my days. And most of the time, I'm present enough to remember it all. My friend Tiffany texted this verse to me the morning I was at the doctor. It's Psalm 57:1. It says, "Have mercy on me, my God. Have mercy on me. For in you I take refuge. I will take refuge in the shadow of your wings until this calamity passes." That imagery was so healing for me at the time, and still is. I imagined the most beautiful winged bird with larger-than-life feathers covering me from the storm as it passed by. It would pass. Until it passes, not if it passes. He would be there, without question, without hesitation, with love and mercy, and abiding presence. What a great God. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, beautiful. So this is where I try to do a little theological knitting together of the issue. And I wrote down 2 notes as I heard you speak, Katie. One is what you said, I lived bound by my anxiety and fear. I lived bound by my anxiety and fear. Jesus says, I came to set the captives free. I think a lot about that in terms of people in poverty, or people in prison, or people in different sort of socioeconomical situations than we are. Jesus met mental illness too. Jesus met mental illness. You also said something about the secrets that we keep from each other. I think we've been bound by the secrets we keep in the community of the church. If you're a member of the church, or you're part of this community, or you've even just been coming for these sessions, or this is the first night you've come to anything here, and you have a secret, find somebody to talk to before you leave. Come talk to one of us. Come talk to Katie. Come talk to Dr. Dave. Come talk to any of us on the mental health initiative team. We have got to become a church. It is a place where people can tell the truth to each other. I'm tired. I'm going to get on the soapbox. I'm privileged in the work that I do, and I'll probably cry. It's the most beautiful thing in my life for you people to come into my office and tell me your secrets. It is exquisite. But I am sick of being the only person that you'll tell your secret to. I'm sick of us as a church not figuring out the ways to create small pockets for people to be honest about the things that bind them. Don't get me wrong, I love you coming to tell me your secret. But as a church, we have to figure out a way that those secrets are being shared in other places. Because we're as sick as our secrets. And finding places for people to tell the truth is important. So thank you, Kate. We talk about this tonight because we're in the business of setting the captives free. And we're in the business of hope winning out over darkness and redemption being a reality in the wounds in our lives. So I'm just really thrilled to look out in this room and see as many people here that want to talk about this stuff. So I'm going to be quiet now and open it up for questions and comments. And all of our mental health team can field those. Justin, I don't know what your time schedule's like, if you've got to go pick up kids in a minute, but Justin's here, and if you've got questions for families, this is a family issue. So there may be a question you might want to have for the family member. Yeah, so if you've got a question or comment or concern, raise your hand and we'll call on you. Yeah.
I'm curious if melatonin impacts anxiety.
Melatonin and anxiety?
No. It can help with sleep, with insomnia, but there's no evidence it helps really with anxiety.
Does melatonin help with anxiety? And the answer was no. Yeah, Lori.
For Justin, did you feel guilty when you found out all that she had struggled with and you didn't know?
Did everybody hear?
Honestly, that was not my first feeling. Frustration, not understanding, not being able to cope. I'm not a sympathy, as Katie would say, was not one of my greatest strengths. So just not having patience and understanding, why can't you get out of bed, why can't you drive down the street? We couldn't get out of the neighborhood and go anywhere without panicking, turn around and go home. So that was, those were my first reactions from a selfish perspective. But it took me a while to understand the issue. Sure.
Yeah, Ruthann.
Thanks for your honesty on that, Justin, and Leslie, that was a good story.
Oh,
And
thank
you
you.
did, you told it so well.
Thank you.
I have a question for Dr. Kavanaugh. You mentioned that methane shortens panic attacks. So the friends, I've never had a panic attack, but I think I know how to recognize them as some friends. And they have to prescribe either Xanax or Klonopin or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
And so, are you saying that like, if they feel it coming on and they take that, it's not gonna be any shorter?
Right, right.
But what will it, what is it, why do they prescribe it? I guess it's on that.
Well, number one, a lot of physicians don't know, they're not trained in this, okay? Number two, patients oftentimes ask for something. Give me something I can take when I feel this coming on, okay? So there's pressure to give them something.
They feel helpless, I'm sure.
Right, exactly, exactly. But there's lots of research. Believe me, the makers of Xanax tried really hard to get it to work that way. They even had people putting, you were supposed to put a needle in and put a hole in the capsule, the Xanax capsule, and put it under your tongue when you felt it coming on. They couldn't get it to work that way. Okay? Nothing has been shown to shorten a panic attack once it starts.
So is there any advantage to that?
Yes. Okay, can I say?
You can say I'm full of crap.
No, no, no. No, I don't think he's full of crap. So one thing that I think was huge for me is that I got to such an advanced state of panic where like my pulse wouldn't register at the doctor's office. You know, I was beyond help. And antidepressants and Zoloft, which I was on, the uptake period is long. So that I didn't do something to hurt myself or, not be able to function in the minimal function that I had, Xanax just kind of took that edge off until the Zoloft did its job. And once the Zoloft started doing its job, like I said, I haven't had a Xanax in over 3 years. So it's like I didn't need it anymore. But it was, I am so grateful for it because I'm not sure what would have happened when I was waiting for my Zoloft.
Now, the tranquilizers, if you take them on a regular basis, they can prevent panic attacks. Yes, absolutely. But taking one when you feel it coming on, that's never been shown to abort the
So are you including Xanax and Klonopin and Ativan in the?
Xanax, Klonopin, and Ativan are the three that have been shown to be useful in panic disorders.
Are they
So
tranquilizers?
Valium and Librium have never been shown to be helpful.
Are they tranquilizers?
Yes, those are the three tranquilizers.
But you gotta take
There's a
away-
lot of antidepressants that help and things like that, but we're talking strictly about,
But you're saying in order for them to be effective,
you have to take it scheduled and it prevents the attack. It doesn't treat it once it's started. Once a panic attack starts, it really has to kind of run its course. And so there's techniques like breathing techniques that you can do, you can be trained in, that helps bring your anxiety level down, but it doesn't really take the panic attack away. It helps you tolerate it while it's running its course.
but I guess that's why you're saying the important thing is to be in psychotherapy or some kind of long range.
Or if you're going to take medication, you take it scheduled, okay? You take it every day to prevent the attack.
It's not like a rescue remedy.
Right, it's not a rescue remedy.
Right. Like a maintenance inhaler or.
Right, yeah, so when you feel an asthma attack coming on, you take an inhaler. Yeah, we don't have an inhaler for panic.
Right.
Yeah, back in the back.
So you talked about depression and anxiety, a lot of times people are both.
Right.
So is there more of a correlation, you have depression, you have anxiety, or anxiety, you have depression?
Yes.
And when do you treat it first?
They go hand in hand. It's hard to say one is more associated
And
with the
if
other.
you treat the depression goes down, does anxiety go down, or vice versa? Or,
Generally.
Yeah,
is
they
there a
generally, if
correlation?
one gets better, the other's going to get better, okay? But remember, a lot of the antidepressants are also treatment for anxiety disorders, okay?
So they don't see some one gets better, one gets worse? They both get better, they both get worse?
Generally, if one gets better, the other one's going to get better. There's a few exceptions, so bupropion, I mentioned that medication. So that's an antidepressant, but it increases anxiety. So there's a case where your depression might be better, but your anxiety goes up.
Yeah, here.
Would you say on the bupropion, that was actually the first time I seen that would be contributed to causing anxiety?
Yes.
I started with antidepressants, and when those were numbing feelings, and I still couldn't get out of bed, I usually give it what we usually prescribe to get up and actually,
Right.
maybe
It's much more activating, right. Of the antidepressants, it's the most activating one. So it's really good for people who can't get out of bed, who are sleeping 12 hours a day, who have no energy. It's really good for them.
Would you say there's like a threshold to how much you can have before it starts to be, because I know you say usually one different.
Right, everybody is unique in how they respond to medications, and so, yeah, it may be that you need to get a higher and higher dose before you cross a certain threshold before you're gonna get better.
Yeah, Terry.
I have a question for Katie. I'm wondering, anywhere in your journey where you're doing like major germ control, if there was anything that anybody said or did that caused you to pause or even just a moment, like, this is, or was it, as a family member that has people that do that, you want to support in that way, were there ever any glimmers? You just had to take the trajectory?
I don't know if there's anything anyone could have said that would have talked me out of my behaviors. I thought I was being smart and proactive and safe. And so you could have told me all day long I was crazy, and I would have been like, no, this is what a good parent would do. This is what a mom who wants to stay there for her children should do. So I don't know, but I know there was plenty of eye rolling and like, oh my gosh, we have to wash the counter again with the baby's here, and yeah, for sure. I drove people crazy, I'm sure, but no one really ever said anything. Yeah, everybody just got annoyed about the feelings, and I just kind of had to react to my psychosis.
So what is the best way for a family member or friend to support somebody, especially just starting out and getting help?
Mental health team, you want to talk about that? How does a family member support a loved one in just getting started with getting help?
Just be there for them. The problem, as you saw with our wonderful testimony today, is that her husband didn't really understand. I think until if you finally understood what your wife was going through, then you were able to be there for her. And so the first step is probably going to be that you need to find a way to understand your spouse or your partner or your children, your family member, if they're experiencing that level of panic. Because the person who's having the panic attack, they don't want any counseling, they just want it fixed right away. They feel like they're going crazy, and they're not. It's the fear factor that keeps the person with anxiety from asking for help, and the spouse, or the partner, is clueless. I mean, I'm sure so you're like, what is wrong with my wife? Why are we doing all this? Why don't you just get better? But once you understood what was happening, it opens a door. Your mind is open, and you can take that knowledge. And that's probably the first step. Once that happens, things can roll out.
I'd like to piggyback on that for a minute. I think that an answer I would give to it is find compassion. So, and part of that means is that you've got to look at these things that we've been talking about over these last 6 weeks, along with a whole host of other things, as diseases. It's not somebody being weird. It's not somebody being a bad person because they can't stop drinking. It's not somebody being lazy because they're so depressed they can't get out of bed. It's somebody that's sick. It's like somebody who has cancer. And so mental health is just an enigma in our society still that we don't really know. It's easier for us to kind of brush it off as just people being flaky or weird. And if we as Christians can have compassion, I mean, that's a real Christian response to wherever there's some dysfunction, is to say, not what's wrong with you, but help me understand you and let me have compassion for you. which is different than let me fix you.
Yes.
Just FYI. That's a disease that many of us have in other ways, yeah. So it's not that we can fix it, but we can be, it's being with someone in pain. You know, it's the opposite of what Job's friends did. They saw him in pain, and they tried to tell Job why he was in pain. And if you can look at that story and kind of find the antithesis to that is, we as Christians are called to be present to pain. Without trying to fix it. And that's a compassionate response. We're not real skilled at that.
Holly, and to piggyback on that, the other way you can help them is go to therapy with the person. You know, because if all you do is talk out of your annoyance or frustration, they're defensive and you're having an argument and they feel attacked and it's about character. So this is kind of getting into maybe marital relations, but if you go with and learn how to talk about these problems and these things and feelings and how can I help it and how can I better understand. Sometimes a therapist can help you get to that point a little quicker.
And I would say too, just know that therapy is a good thing. I mean, how many times in this last 6 weeks have I said something like, you know, people will want to come talk to me, but when we talk about therapy, for crazy people, right? For crazy people. As a family member, someone who loves someone that's going through something, to offer, let's go talk to somebody. Let's go talk to somebody. That's a helpful thing. Somebody had a hand over here. Yeah, and then back here.
So then, let's say the other side of that is, what happens when the person refuses? That open ended. I mean, how do you continue to be compassionate? I think that's where a lot of times things break down, especially when you're a close family member and time passes for a long time. And you just refuse to help them.
It's a hard one. It's a hard one. I think in the 12-step program that's been helpful for me in my life, they talk about detaching with love. So you learn how to love without expectation. You learn how to be present without demanding that somebody be a certain way. But it's hard. It's a hard one. And it's walking your faith really in a deep and daily, by second way. When the person that you love is resistant to help, that's a hard one. And that's one that you need some help with. It's one you got to talk about.
So people in that, we talk about those people who pre-contemplate. So they're not thinking about taking an action. It's before they're even considering. So the best approaches for those people are not dragging them. It's faith education and helping them try to recognize the impact of whatever it is on their life. Because they have to come to a point where they say, okay, maybe I should think about getting some help, okay? And so all you can do is give them information and point out things to them about, well, you know, maybe if you've gotten help, this wouldn't have happened. You know, we can do things. This is impacting you in some way.
I think there's a faith answer to that too. I think it took me a minute to get to. And this is that hard to catch with love stuff. If any of my 12-step brothers and sisters are out there, help me out. But there's a point where you have to just realize that God's got them. And it's their journey with God. And there have been people that in my life that I've had to say, okay, God, I don't get it. And I think I know best. And God has told me in different ways and different times, you don't know better than me. I can do it better than you. So there's a faith thing in there too. We want people to get help, and it is terribly painful when they do not. And yet, I think it's a faith response.
And also don't take it personally. Okay? So when they're backing off, it's not because of you, it's because of their disorder, their problem, and they're not ready yet.
But if you've got your cape on, trying to save the world like I do, then it is, you do take it. I mean, this is a big, there's lots of logical things, but let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it. Let's talk. Find somebody to talk to. Terry, and then we'll break for individual questions because we're running out of time. Go ahead, Terry.
Well, I'm one of your brothers and sisters.
Yes, you are.
One of the things that I was taught is that whether you have mental illness or an addiction, I've had both, you're on an elevator that's going down. And every time a family member, whether I'm doing it or they did it for me, inserted themselves in my elevator, it hits that family member, and I think the family member is the problem. I bounce back up, and now it's gonna take even longer for the elevator to get down here. So the less that I'm inserting myself, the more likelihood, possibility, statistically, there is for the elevator to get to the bottom floor when it's not.
I'm gonna wrap us up to honor time. I know some of you need to go get some. Thank you, Justin, for being here. Your honesty and vulnerability and answering questions are really needed things. Thank you all for your presence and interest in the series. Clearly, there's interest and you wanted to talk about this. So we're going to keep talking about it. Continuing the conversation will happen on the first Sunday of every month, which this Sunday is the first one. It's at 12:15 in the loft, which is on the other side of the campus. It would be helpful if you're going to come, if you could RSVP to Debbie Snyder. We're going to have some there, but it's hard for me to know how much. So you may want to put a protein bar in your purse. I don't know. Hospitality ain't my gift.
That's okay, Debbie's got to cover.
Okay. But this is going to be a time for us to keep talking about these things. There are issues for family members that are a little different for people that are living with it. And as a church, we just need to keep talking. So I don't know exactly how you're going to go with this. Members of our mental health initiative team will be there. We're just going to keep talking. So if you'd like to come, it's this Sunday and the first Sunday of November and the first Sunday of December. And after that, I don't know exactly what will happen, but we'll see. God cares about wherever there's wounds. And so I believe God's been a part of this. And Katie, you were really instrumental in getting us moving. There is child care, and I think by reservation. So if you need child care, when you make a reservation with Debbie and make it tomorrow if you can, let her know that. And I think that's right. I think that's right. If you need to be there and you have kids come, we'll figure it out. Okay?
Graduation?
Yes. Thank you, David. I will be sending out, most of you, if you've been here before, you've gotten an email from me in the last few days that talks about continuing the conversation. I'm going to be sending out another email to you all with an evaluation of these 6 nights. What was helpful? What wasn't? What do you think we need to do next? Some of those kinds of questions. We want to kind of hear from you. So if you've never filled out a note card, I need you to give me your email address. And I guess the way to do that is come talk to me, and I'll write down your email address. So thank you to Katie and Justin. Tremendous story. And thank you, David, for your expertise and for your initial vision coming into my office. I know you're very long. Lovely. Thank you to mental health. Mental health team, would you stand up so people can recognize? Questions that you want to have more one-on-one conversation. We'll be up here and look for emails and notifications of things to come.
And Holly, thank you.
Yes.